Okay, welcome to Rave Waves by the Book Show. I'm your guest host for today, John Fioravanti, coming to you live from sunny Waterloo, Ontario in Canada. Today's show is being sponsored by RISA. If you'd like to know how to get your own commercial to air on one of our shows, just visit the Rave Waves tab on the RRBC website for information. It's a fantastic way to promote your books. Joining us today from sunny Miami, Florida, is the author of Breathless, a short story, Yvette Calero. Hi, Yvette.
Hi, everybody.
Listeners, if you have any questions or comments for Yvette, I'll be opening the floor for those questions or comments throughout the show. Your mics will remain muted until that time. We ask that you please give us a little wave of your hand if you'd like to be recognized. And then once you're recognized, you can unmute your mic. You may also access the chat function located at the bottom of your screen to type your questions or comments to us. Well, thank you for joining us, Yvette.
Thank you for having me.
We're so delighted to learn more about you and your book. Yvette, we all know that you are a molder of young minds. A school teacher, which requires a lot of take-home after-hours work. And as a veteran of 35 years in the high school classroom, nobody appreciates that more than I do. So how and when do you find the time to write, being in this very demanding profession?
Honestly, I need to get better at that. I have been struggling with finding time to write. I think ever since the pandemic hit, everyone was under this impression that we would have all this time on our hands. But I don't seem to find that time. It doesn't seem to come to me. I am very busy between teaching and spending time with my son and some appointments here and there. It's a little difficult. So whenever I can find the time, I fit it in. It's not a priority right now for me, but I sprinkle it in whenever I can do it.
Okay. Are you guys still on remote learning or are you back in the classroom?
We are a mixed mash of everything. I am back in the classroom until a student in my classroom comes down with the virus, and then I'm sent home for 2 weeks, and then I come back to the classroom. And when I'm in the classroom, I have some students in front of me, and then I have everyone else on Zoom. So I'm teaching dual modalities at the same time, and lots of fun. Never a dull moment.
I'm so happy to be retired.
Yeah.
Yvette, your bio states that you are heavily addicted to young adult and adult novels. So when did this addiction for young adult novels begin? And do you think that reading from this genre helps you better connect with your students?
Absolutely. I started reading at least as far back as my memory can remember. I fell in love with books in 7th grade. I had an English teacher who used to read to us. She read The Hobbit, and I just absolutely fell in love with the storyline, with the characters, with the imagination. And I never stopped reading since then. I grew up reading V.C. Andrews, which is not fantasy, but it just grabbed me, and I threw myself into it. And from there, I went to another novel, The Chronicles of Narnia, which is fantasy, and I just never stopped. As far as my students, they don't read. They are intensive reading students, so they struggle with passing the state exam. And so they get shoved into an intensive reading class to teach them the skills that they need for the state exam. So I share with them stories that are entertaining and exciting, and try to get them to tap into a love for reading. Many of them come from families that are non-readers. So they don't know that reading can be fun. And unfortunately, the state, it's all about, teaching to the test. So they don't see the fun in reading. So I'm always sharing with them books that I've read and how exciting they were. And when a movie comes out that's based on the book, I go crazy about it. And then after testing season, I bring in a novel for us to read and try to get them to realize that reading can be fun, but it's a struggle.
Well, in my life, it was my mother that turned me into a reader. I never had any trouble with reading. I was blessed academically. I just wasn't terribly interested. So she would force me while she came home from work and was cooking the dinner in the kitchen. I sat on the floor in the kitchen with a book and I had to read to her. And if I read any words that she knew I didn't know, I had to go get a dictionary and look them up.
That sounds like me and my son. I would force him to read. He would have to read every day in the car, to daycare, like to elementary and back, to middle school and back. He's read all of Harry Potter. He's read so many different books, Chronicles of Narnia. And once he's in the book, he loves it. But getting him to pick up the book and sit and read, it gets harder and harder as he gets into the teenage years.
Wow. And I remember the first book she made me read was Gulliver's Travels. That was a good one. So, Yvette, do your students know that you're an author, and do they read your books?
Yes, and maybe sometimes. I start the class off with a poem that I wrote that references multiple stories that I've read and fell in love with. And that's how I introduce the class, to try to get them to see that reading can be fun and impactful in their life. And then I talk about all the books in that poem, one of them being mine. And then I show them all of my books and I tell them that they can check them out for me whenever they want for free to read them. And some years I get kids who read the whole series, and other years I get a couple of kids here and there. This year is a lot harder with COVID. You know, sharing materials is frowned upon. But when I taught high school, I started my career in high school. I taught for 20 years at a high school. They would read them all the time. Middle school, little more difficult, but I've been at my middle school for about 5 years, and I've had maybe 6 or 7 kids read the books.
Well, that's good. That's really good. Now, how about your school's administration? Do they know you're an author? And does that benefit your writing career in any way, especially being in an environment where books and reading are big deals?
They know I'm an author. They haven't read the books yet, which is interesting, but I am the sponsor of the Creative Writing Club at my school. We focus on spoken word poetry, and they compete in written poetry competitions and also a spoken word poetry competition. So I think I got that because they know I'm an author. I came into a school that already had a creative writing teacher. So I'm waiting for him to retire so I can take over. But yeah, they're aware that I'm an author.
Good, good. I'm curious, Yvette, in this age of social media, which was just in its infancy when I was teaching, are you one of those teachers who follows your students on social media? And if so, why?
No.
No?
No, it's actually against our ethics policy to follow students. I have an open Instagram page and Facebook page and Twitter page. So they can follow me, but I only post author information. I don't post personal stuff on those sites. So it's just a professional site, and they can follow me there if they want. On my Instagram, I put a lot of meditative quotes. Twitter, I'm always promoting books, but I never engage with them except for outside of the educational platform. We have an educational platform, which is very similar to Facebook, but it's for teaching and students and teachers to communicate. Okay. So that is how I communicate with them, but not through social media.
How recent is that particular social media
program
platform?
I've been using it now maybe five years. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty great. Now, once my kids graduate, then they can, find me. Again, when I taught high school, that was a lot easier because they were more connected. middle school. By the time they get to high school, I doubt any of them are going to remember that. But that platform, I want to say it's about 5 years. I think I started it in middle school, once I started teaching middle school.
Okay. All there was when I was teaching was Facebook and Twitter, I think.
Yeah.
And they were just starting to develop guidelines for teachers on the internet and so on. And they really frowned upon us exchanging emails with students. And I think they outright forbid it at one point.
Yeah, it is for us.
Obviously email parents, you know. So that's interesting. I just want to take a moment now to go to the gallery and see if there are any questions or comments for you, Yvette.
Okay.
Would anyone like to ask a question or have a comment for Yvette? Okay, Linnea.
Linda. Hi, John. Hi, Yvette.
Hi, Linda.
I think Nani and I had the same question when you said you left high school to go to middle school. And so my question is why?
I thought I would retire from the high school. Unfortunately, we got a principal that was very difficult to work with. He had a problem with strong women. And he was constantly trying to drag us down. And I dealt with it for about 4 years. I developed anxiety during those 4 years. And I realized that for my health, I would not outlast him. At the same time, my son was about to move from elementary school to middle school, and the middle school hours are much later than high school hours. And I would not have, I'm a single mom, so I would not have anyone to take him to school. So I thought if I could find the best middle school for him to attend, then I would want to work there to make it easier for him to go there. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. I'm at the best middle school in our area, in our county for middle school. So.
Well, I'm glad it didn't have to do with the kids.
No, the kids were amazing. I loved them. And I love the middle school kids too. Mm-hmm. Kids just want to be loved. They want to feel important. They want to know someone cares about them. It doesn't matter their age, mm-hmm. you know, and as long as you show them that you care, they'll work with you. And that's one of the things I love is trying to help them find their own self-importance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Linnea Tanner, did you have a question?
I just wanted to ask a question. You said you focused on the reading part of it. Did you also include maybe the creative writing into it, or was your classes just focused on the reading? And the reason I was asking is that sometimes the creative part of it can bring more out in kids.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Linnea. Years ago, teachers had a lot more autonomy, and we were allowed to teach whatever we wanted. Unfortunately, we have governors who believe in making state tests so that they can make money off of those state tests. And they have insisted that we teach a very structured curriculum. And it's taken all of the creativity out. Now, I do try to incorporate it every now and then. I have the kids write a poem when we're studying poetry for the test. I have the kids write a compare and contrast between two songs and the lyrics of those two songs when we have to write compare and contrast. So I try to get away with it whenever I can, but it's very, very structured, which is very sad for me.
No, because some of your poetry inspires me. So, I mean, that's good that you can include some of that.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think Joy has a message.
Joy?
I do, yes. You mentioned Harry Potter. And I think, to be honest, that the Harry Potter series has done a tremendous amount for children's reading. I really think that, you know, suddenly kids that weren't reading at all, suddenly they were so interested in Harry Potter. And just a comment, really.
Joy, I have to tell you, I think Harry Potter has done so much for adults, not just children. I fell in love with that world. I mean, absolutely. And not just the world, the brilliance in her writing.
Yes.
She every single book, the vocabulary became more and more difficult, and the sentence structure became more difficult. And the way that she brought out who the bad guy was at the end, and all the little hints she gave throughout the story, brilliant writing as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it just opened up a world for everyone. When you go to Universal here in Florida, they have a whole Harry Potter world, and it's the adults that are totally geeked out in the robes and the wands, and it's just phenomenal.
Okay, Pat. Unmute yourself, Pat. Pat, we can't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. And to realize that this beautiful author was turned down from Harry Potter stories for about 50 or 55, 100 times before she could find someone that would publish her.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yep. I'm so happy she never gave up.
Yeah, she was persistent.
Very good. Anyone else have a question or comment? Okay. Yvette, let's move into your book, Breathless, a short story. Now, this is your first short, if I'm not mistaken. So what moved you into the short story arena?
The 90-day Alpha Omega short story contest. I've written, like, I've started short stories, and when I was like 13, I wrote a short story, but trust me, it's not publishable. It was just the ramblings of a 12-year-old. But I've been watching through the years this short story contest, and I've fallen in love with all the short stories I've read. But the idea of writing in such a small amount of words frightened me, because I am a wordy person. And even when I write emails, I'm very wordy. So the idea of trying to make that so concise was a little frightening for me, but I was up for the challenge, and I have a novel that I want to write. And so I figured I would write a little prequel short story to it and see if it worked out. And I'm really happy with how it came out.
Okay, so your intention is to expand it into a full novel?
Well, the full novel idea came first. And then when that challenge came around, I kept trying to rack my brain in what could I possibly write that's so short, because my plots go all over the place. And so I figured I could write this backstory, which it was initially going to be part of the novel in a backstory kind of flashback, little by little. But it just felt perfect for the writing contest, so I did it.
Okay, I think you already answered part of my next question, which was give us a little background on the book, and tell us how it's being received.
So background, the premise of it, I had a dream, which is where most of my story ideas come. I have a very active voice in my head. And it basically was a scene where this girl gets in trouble at a college club, a college party, frat party. Her drink gets spiked and she ends up in trouble. And this brooding guy comes to rescue her. And of course she becomes smitten with him, but he's very standoffish. He wants nothing to do with her. And so when I woke up from the dream, I immediately wrote it down, but it kept bothering me, like, why is he being that way? And that's where the concept of Breathless, and I can't tell you because some of you haven't read the story, so I don't want to give it away, but that's where this male character started. And so Breathless is a story about a woman who is very enamored with this jerk of a guy, and wants a night of romance with him. And she's not even on his radar, but she has this magic within her family. And she knows that she can transform her outer look to be able to have that moment with him. And doesn't go as planned, but again, I'm not going to give that away. How it's being received? I think people are enjoying it, which makes me very happy to see. I don't really have, I don't look at the reviews all the time, but last time I checked, the reviews were pretty good. So that makes my heart happy.
Well, that's great. Since it was your first short story, did you enjoy writing it? And will you write more?
I hope to write more. I keep trying to come up with ideas for the next contest. I'm struggling with that because, again, it has to be concise, and I like having stories that have complicated twists, and how every character has their own story within the story. So I've got to find one character and be able to tell that one story. But yes, I do want to write more short stories.
Yeah. Well, I admire your pluck, because I've been thinking about writing a short story for a while, but like you used to be, I'm petrified. So I haven't started yet. And I look at the 2 novels I've written, and they got 3 million characters and 70,000 subplots and short story. Wow. So
yeah, but I could totally see it, John. Like any one of those characters, you can write just one day in that character's life, yeah, and have a short story, and it would be phenomenal. I love your characters. So I mean, I would totally read that.
Well, I'm gonna have to give it some more thought, that's for sure. Before I finish off with my questions, I'd like to go back to the gallery and see if there's any more questions or comments from those of you in the gallery.
I have a quick one.
Okay, Linda.
Yvette, I have the most fantastic dreams. I mean, they're so brilliant and vibrant. I don't want to wake up. And when I do, I can't recall them. I just know they were really good. So do you have a tip or trick for bringing those things back?
So normally I have a journal right next to my bed. And so when I am getting into that semi-awake state where I'm now starting to control the dream, that is when I tend to wake myself up and grab the journal and just write it out. But I do have a very loud voice in my head. So sometimes it's just a daydream, or I'm in the shower, or I'm driving. But for the morning ones, it is the minute I wake up, I have to hold on to that with all my might and just write.
Okay.
And the more I do it, the easier it becomes.
Okay.
Okay, Maura Beth, you had a question?
I was just wondering, Yvette, have you started on the full-length story that was your idea before you wrote Breathless? Are you working on it?
No, go ahead.
Well, when I got to the end of Breathless, that was one of my thoughts, was I kind of felt like there could be more. So
the full-length story is 100 years later after Breathless.
How many?
100.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Breathless takes place in 1920, and then the full length would be 2020-ish. I have not started on it. I am struggling right now in my writing because I'm trying really hard to write the story of one of my characters from my fantasy series. And he's fighting me tooth and nail. So I've been working on that, unfortunately, for a couple of years. And I've got some written, I'm getting there, but it's hard. And I don't have the time to write 2 different novels at the same time. I also have a contemporary young adult fiction that I'm editing right now. So that'll be released at some point this year. But no, I haven't started writing it. It's here.
Pat?
We'll look forward to that.
Thank you.
Character profiles. Because you're talking right now about being stuck on one character. Do you use character profiles?
Oh yeah, he's completely written out. In fact, he was part of my series, and he was in 3 of the 5 book series. He's just a pain in the butt. And really,
it's characters get like that.
It's not even him. It's telling his story, because his story covers 600 years. So the biggest struggle was trying to figure out how to write that without being boring. So I think I figured that part out. Now it's just a matter of doing the writing. Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, Yvette, sometimes it's also good to ask him, well, how do you think I should write this story? And it's amazing because you step outside of, the character actually steps outside of you and you're listening as if he's actually there talking to you.
Pat, I can tell you that this character doesn't wait for me to ask. For anyone who's read that series, they know that he is forthright in and of himself. So, yeah.
Very good.
I just noticed, Linda, that Nani has some advice for you and your problem. You have to wake up faster and grab that dream and run to your computer. So there you go. Okay. Yvette, we've been having loads of discussion in the club lately, as you're aware, regarding the honesty in reviews that we give and how professionals should approach and handle less than stellar reviews of our books and our writing. Now, have you ever received a negative review of one of your books or your writing? And if so, how did you handle it?
I don't know that I've received a negative review. I've received critical reviews. And of course, like every human, stings a little bit. You know, that's your baby. You want everyone to love your baby, but I am the type of person that when someone says something to me, I take steps backward. I'm not a reactionary person. I tend to go inward and contemplate and think on what was said before responding. I don't have arguments with people because I don't give them the opportunity to get a reaction from me. So I did that with those reviews. And after I took my ego away, I was able to see that they were right. There were errors. There was some repetitiveness. There was some tightening up that needed to be done. And I went back and I did that. I'm okay with negative reviews. I think there are people out there that are all about bashing stories. And I don't want to give those people my energy. So I've never had a troll, but if I ever do get a troll, I think I'll just ignore them and let other people choose for themselves. When I go to buy a book, I don't read the reviews because reviews give away the story. And I don't want the story to be told to me. I want to experience it. I read books to lose myself in that world, not to get a Cliff Notes version in the reviews. So I'll look at the stars, and if the vast majority of stars are 3, 4s, and 5s, then I consider it a good book. And I'll take a chance on it. But I don't tend to read reviews from other people. They are not me. They don't have the experience I have. And their likes and dislikes don't necessarily reflect on my likes and dislikes.
Exactly. Good approach. I think I like that. Yvette, you've been with the club for several years now, since 2014, I believe. Mm-hmm. And you're now a VIP and a lifetime member of RRBC. So congratulations.
Thank you.
What do those honors mean to you?
Everything. And this is my family. It really is. When I first started, I was lucky. I found RBC right at the beginning of my pursuit in becoming an author. I found it right after all my rejections for my first book. And I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea, how to write a query letter or any of that. And honestly, I can't even tell you how I found it, but I found it. And I just started seeing all of these different authors supporting each other. I'm a member of another group, which will not be named, and they don't do that. They just promote their own books. And this was different. This was, if you're going to be a part of us, you're going to support other authors. And I loved that because that's part of who I am. I get more happiness from helping other people than for trying to build my own happiness on my own. So I gravitated toward that, and I have not regretted the journey at all.
No, I think most of us feel much the same way, Yvette. You also sit on the RISA roster. Now, how has RISA helped you as an author?
I love it. I am so blessed that I was accepted into that amazing part of this organization. It's helping me get better at writing. I mean, I'm honored that they felt my writing was good enough to be entered into it, but I'm getting better because of it. We have a critique group, which is amazing. And we share our writing with each other. And my critique partners are constantly giving me suggestions and showing me ways of making my writing better. And honestly, the advice and the guidance that I'm getting from my critique partners is priceless. That is probably the thing I value most in RISA, is having that opportunity to sit with incredible authors and have them critique my work before I publish it. It's amazing.
Wow. Okay, that one final question. Since you're here on Buy the Book, tell us why we should all run out and buy your book, Breathless, a short story.
Well, if you like stories that have a twist, that are gonna have an ending that you don't see coming, that are not the typical mushy-gushy romance, then you're gonna like Breathless, because it has all of that in it.
Yeah. I can attest to that. That I wasn't ready. I never saw that ending coming.
Yay.
That was well done. Okay, Yvette, the clock is running out on us. So I'd like to thank you for joining us here today on Buy the Book and allowing us to get to know you better, as well as sharing your short story with us. To my studio audience, I want to thank you for being here with us today on Buy the Book. Your support is always appreciated. You really make these shows extra special. Remember, if you miss a live show, you can always find the episodes in the archives of the RRBC site. I'm your guest host, John Fioravanti, thanking you for joining us for another episode of Buy the Book.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Production.
Thank you, John.
Join us again soon for another episode of Rave Waves, where all things literary are our passion. We'll see you all next time. For now, stay safe until we're all fully on the other side of this pandemic, God willing. Have a great weekend, y'all.
Thank you, John.
Bye. Thank you,
everybody, for coming.
Thank you, John.
Bye.